सो डियर स्टूडेंट्स, आज हम फिर से डिस्कस करेंगे कि कैसे एटम्स रिएक्ट करते हैं एक दूसरे के साथ. डियर स्टूडेंट्स, दिस विल बी द पार्ट थर्ड of this topic, which belongs to 10th science, and the unit is metals and non-metals. So dear students, today we will discuss how metals chemically combine with non-metals. Dear students, जो metal atoms होते हैं, they have either one or two or three electrons in valence shell. So जो भी atom होगा, if that atom have one, two or three electrons in its outermost shell, it belongs to the metals. So these metal atoms, they can either easily lose these electrons because they are electropositive in nature. And why they lose these electrons? Because they want to attain nearest noble gas configuration. We have already discussed in a previous lecture why do atoms combine, or why do atoms lose or gain electrons or share electrons so as to acquire inert stable noble gas configuration. So dear students, the atom which is having one electron in its outermost shell, it can lose this one electron and form a single positively charged metal cation. And the atom, if it is having two valence electron, it can lose both of these electrons and form a di-positive cation. And similarly, an atom which belongs to a metal, if it is having three electrons in its valence shell, it can lose all these three electrons and form tri-positive cation. So dear students, if we take the example of sodium, magnesium and aluminium. Sodium is atomic number, sodium is having 11 atomic number, 12 for magnesium, and 13 is the atomic number of aluminium. Dear students, if we write the electronic configuration, so that is 2, 8 and 1, and here we have 12 electrons. So first shell can accommodate maximum 2 electrons, second 8, and the remaining 2 electrons are placed in third energy level. And similarly for aluminium, first shell have 2 electrons, then 8, and the last shell have 3 electrons. So here we have 1 electron in the last shell, valence shell, outermost shell. Here we have 2 electrons and we have 3 electrons. If the sodium loses this electron, it loses this 1 electron, it forms 2 and 8 configuration. And if it loses 2, it has to lose both its 2 electrons to form 2 and 8, that is the nearest noble gas configuration. So aluminium has to lose all the 3 electrons so as to acquire the nearest inert gas configuration. So this is the configuration of neon 10. So dear students, during this process losing of electrons, Na loses 1 electron, it forms Na positive. Magnesium loses 2 electrons, it forms Mg2 positive. Aluminium loses 3 electrons, it forms Al3 positive. Dear students, this is the simplest concept कि एक एटम को चाहिए कि नियरेस्ट नोबल गैस कॉन्फ़िगरेशन उसको मिलनी चाहिए. सो उसके लिए अगर इसके लास्ट सेल में एक इलेक्ट्रॉन होगा, वही एक इलेक्ट्रॉन उसको लूज करना होगा। दो होंगे, वो दोनों इलेक्ट्रॉन्स उसको लूज करने होंगे। अगर तीन इलेक्ट्रॉन होंगे तो तीनों इलेक्ट्रॉन्स उसको लूज करने होंगे। तो यहाँ पे क्या है कि कैटायंस बनते हैं, और इस प्रॉपर्टी को, जिसमें एक मेटल एटम इलेक्ट्रॉन्स को लूज करता है, and this property is known as electropositive nature. Dear students, coming on to the case of non-metals. Non-metals जो होते हैं, they have either 5, 6 or 7 electrons in valence shell or outermost shell. So what happens, these non-metals, they gain electrons to attain nearest noble gas configuration. So if we take the example of chlorine, if we take the example of oxygen, or if we take the example of nitrogen, dear students, this nitrogen, its atomic number is 7 and electronic configuration is 2 and 5. Oxygen, its atomic number is 8, its electronic configuration is 2 and 6. Dear students, this is the chlorine, its atomic number is 17 and its configuration is 2, 8 and 7. So dear students, sodium contains 5 electrons in its outermost shell. Oxygen contains 6 electrons in its outermost shell. Chlorine contains 7 electrons in its outermost shell. So this nitrogen atom, it gains 3 electrons. It forms N minus 3. Oxygen gains 2 electrons. It forms O2 negative. The chlorine, it gains 1 electron. It forms Cl negative. So dear students, this nature of these metals is known as electronegative character, because the atoms of these non-metals, they have tendency of gaining electrons, and ions are formed which are known as anions. So now we have the concept, if a metal combines with a non-metal. Dear students, if a metal is going to combine with a non-metal, the metal, it loses electrons, and these electrons are being gained by the non-metal. And when metal loses electrons, it forms positively charged ion. And when non-metal gained these electrons which are lost by this metal, it forms negatively charged ion. So when a metal and non-metal combines, ionic species are being formed. And dear students, these ionic species, they are held together by strong electrostatic force of attraction, which we called as ionic bond. So let's see an example of sodium chloride, NaCl. Dear students, Na, sodium, it is metal. Chlorine, it is non-metal. So sodium is metal, chlorine is non-metal. Atomic number of sodium is 11 and chlorine has an atomic number of 17. So its configuration is 2, 8 and 1, and its configuration is 2, 8 and 7. Dear students, see how these two atoms combine. This sodium contains one electron in its outermost shell. So to acquire the nearest noble gas configuration, that is corresponding to the neon, it has to lose its single electron. And here what happens? Sodium loses one electron. It forms Na positive plus one electron. Dear student, now what happens to the chlorine? Chlorine is having 7 electrons in its outermost shell, so it is in short of one electron. So this one electron is gained by this chlorine atom. So what happens? This chlorine atom, it forms Cl negative. So these two ions, they are held together by electrostatic force of attraction. Na positive, Cl negative compound is formed, sodium chloride. So dear students, if we write the Lewis symbols or electron dot structures, for example, we write here sodium. In case of Lewis symbols or electron dot structures, we mention only valence electron of an atom. So I have write here the symbol of sodium, that is Na. It contains only one valence electron, that is Na. That is the X. This is the electron. And then I will write chlorine. Chlorine contains 7 electrons, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So what happens? This single electron that exists in the last shell of sodium, this is loosed by the sodium and it is simultaneously gained by chlorine. So transfer of electron from sodium, that is the metal, to chlorine, that is the non-metal, takes place with the effect NaCl compound formation takes place, which we called as sodium chloride, common salt. Dear students, this sodium chloride, we simply write it by NaCl. We can also, we know that it exists as Na positive, Cl negative, because sodium has lost one electron, that is gained by Cl negative, and these ionic species are formed here. So these compounds in which ionic species are formed, they are known as ionic compounds. And the bond between the two ions is the ionic bond. So dear students, it is clear now that when the atoms of metal, they combine with the atom of non-metals, what happens? Atoms, they lose electron, and the electrons lost, they are being gained by the non-metals. So positively charged metal cations and negatively charged non-metallic anions are being formed, and these ionic species are held together by strong electrostatic force of attraction, which we called as the ionic bond, and these compounds are thus referred as ionic compounds. So when metals, they combine with non-metals, they form the ionic compounds, or we call them as electrovalent compounds. And the charge that positively charged species or negatively charged species gains, this is known as the electrovalency. Dear students, I hope that you have got the concept. Finally, thanks.